Good morning, accursed. Afflicted as you are with the strange need to hear yet more about this election. If I'm right, this is Wednesday, the day before the vote. Opposition parties are hardening their attacks on Ford in these final days, but our latest numbers from Greg Lyle would indicate the mountain is high. With me, as always, are two of Canada's leading political strategists, Jenni Byrne and Scott Reid. But first, let's get a rundown on the news from Allison Smith at Queen's Park today.
Good morning. So final day of the campaign. It's going to be a busy one for NDP leader Andrea Horwath. She's doing 7 events, all over the place, out to Cambridge, down through the Hamilton area, Brantford, Brant, back to Toronto. Del Duca himself did 7 events yesterday, and now he's only doing 2 today. So I don't know what to make of that. Horwath is staying on the horse. Doug Ford, he's going to have a rally tonight at the Toronto Congress Centre. He's going to canvass.
They say,
yeah.
Last minute, he might show up. Nothing but Nathan's hot dogs and cold Coca-Cola.
Yeah, so that follows a pretty weird day from the Ford campaign yesterday, where he missed an event that was at a bowling alley in St. Catharines, and nobody really told anyone that he wasn't coming. So they were waiting around for a long time while his Get It Done song just played and played and played in this dark bowling alley with blue PC lighting. And
I'd expect him to show up at a bowling alley.
Yeah, I don't know. There's suggestions that maybe his bus broke down and he didn't want to tell anybody, but I cannot verify that. But he did do an event in the afternoon, so he's fine. And they were supposed to do a rally in Ajax last night, but then they said, no, we're going to do a bigger rally in Etobicoke tonight instead.
I like that. No stinking tiny rallies for us. We only want big Etobicoke-sized rallies.
You know what? They don't want to be seen to have disregarded Jenny's advice and have something go squirrely. They are listening to Jenny on these rallies. That's why they pulled that fucking thing last night.
That's right.
Well, no, the Ajax rally, I'm told, was canceled days ago for the rally tonight.
Yeah, it wasn't on his agenda yesterday morning. It was just kind of swirling. Yeah. So that's why I didn't even mention it, because but I guess it was swirling around. People had been invited to it. So they are the ones who had learned it was canceled. Speaking of
bottom
rallies,
line, Jenny, though, they went from 2 rallies to 1, right? Which would make sense.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do, I would have done last night. If you're gonna do any, tonight is the last, if I'm a local campaign manager and I say this now not running running the campaign, I would basically be we're not sending anybody. We're looking around, and if you have useless people in the campaign office who want to do strategy and policy still, you're you guys go to the rally.
That's me. I'm at the card table in the corner thinking, maybe there's a tax credit that could help us pull this thing out.
And Reid, I would send you to the all important rally the night before the election campaign then, if you were in my campaign office.
For sure, absolutely. Sorry, Allison.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, just speaking of rallies, Del Duca did hold one last night, and his camp gave us numbers. I know you guys are always asking me how many people are at these things. Apparently 350 turned out for Del Duca yesterday in Mississauga, I think.
In Mississauga, they sent out an email at 10 o'clock at night saying, listen, Liberals, we had 350 people. Here's some photographs. Steve is full of energy. He's cracking. He's snapping. He's popping. He's a breakfast cereal of a leader. And so
was
very
he wearing
exciting.
a vest?
He was. He was wearing a kind of a day glow one. It was very nice. It really caught the eye.
So that's about it. And I expect tomorrow there's not going to be much going on until the evening hours when we head over to, I'm going to be at Ford's Congress Center event tomorrow. And we'll just be kind of waiting around for the results. But I guess that's tomorrow's conversation.
Just to make Jenny go completely berserk, they should hold a rally at 11 a.m. tomorrow, the PCs. They're going to hold a rally in downtown Toronto, the conference center.
So, Allison, just on their notifications, as you reprint them out in the Queen's Park Today newsletter, I've noticed a change this morning in that the last number of days, the Horwath and Del Duca events have been Del Duca will appear at 9 o'clock at this school to announce the killing of Doug Ford. And then Horvath will say, and she'll be at such and such a coffee shop to announce the need to kill Doug Ford. And now today, that's all gone from the notice. It's like, I'm going to show up and talk about lower taxes on prepared food, or I'm going to talk about health.
Oh, the HST again on prepared food.
On prepared foods, yeah.
I don't understand how that didn't break through, because personally, like, prepared foods is an enormous part of my life, and I don't know why people like that. To me, should punch through. Right? Wait a minute, I still have to pay tax on prepared food? What's wrong with you liberals? Like that should track, shouldn't it?
There's just something very
Macaroni?
unsexy about the phrase prepared foods. It's like, whoa.
Ergo, Scott, I think she's saying something very unsexy about you.
I guess so, because I am as they tell you in grade 10 biology, I am 94% water and 6% prepared foods. So unless you think water's sexy, I guess.
Anyway, am I right about that, or is that just the way you're reporting it out? Have they changed the way they're describing their events?
Not necessarily. I think we just get a little bit maybe sick of writing that Doug Ford's going to hold the or that Stephen Del Duca is going to hold a rally to do the same thing every day. Their events are all pretty similar.
David is right. I just got their itinerary. I just got the Liberal itinerary. David is right. The Eagle Eye campaign following son of a gun. Stephen Del Duca will speak about the benefits of cutting HST on prepared foods and get my vote as a consequence. But until now, David was right. Every day they'd say, Stephen Del Duca will make an announcement on stopping Doug Ford. That was what it was. Stopping Doug Ford, as though like somebody who's going to run out in traffic in front of his bus. And maybe that's what happened yesterday. And maybe that's why they don't need to talk about it anymore. Maybe they succeeded. They stopped Doug Ford and he didn't make it to the bowling alley.
All right, Allison, where do people find your fine newsletter?
Yeah, hit us up at politicstoday.news. We also have a bigger story in the newsletter today about the Monty McNaughton, the endorsement of Monty McNaughton by Pat Dillon, and we talked to some people about that. So if you sign up today, we'll send it to you. Politicstoday.news.
Great. Thank you, Allison. We'll see you tomorrow for one last show. Or two. No, sorry, we got two more to go, don't we?
2 more to go.
Yeah, all right. See ya.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Let's talk about a couple of truisms of living through these last 2 pandemic lockdown years. Our ability to move about freely was severely restricted. We've been hyper-focused on our own health. And the two are related. Think of how you accessed your doctor or how you filled a prescription during those lockdown periods. Not shockingly, COVID-19 dramatically increased the demand for all kinds of digital health services, particularly virtual care. Telus is our presenting sponsor. They created their Telus Health business 13 years ago, and since that time, it's grown into Canada's leading provider of digital health technology and primary care. I'll give you some staggering numbers to chew on in just a second. But as a company rooted in social purpose, Telus Health is aligned with Telus's mission. That is, to use their world-leading technology in a way that's not only good for business, but good for people in the world. That means a seamless flow of health information and systems that allow Canadians the opportunity to play an active role in managing their health. I'm a pollster. I know how numbers can powerfully tell a story, and these ones really speak to the changing nature of how we get the care we need. In 2021 alone, there were 551 million digital health transactions through Telus Health. What the devil is a digital health transaction, you ask? So did I. Well, it's everything from visiting your doctor virtually, to processing your health insurance claims, to enabling care teams to remotely monitor patients at home, to your doctor managing your health through an electronic medical record and shipping medications to your doorstep with virtual pharmacy service, to physiotherapists and other allied providers processing e-claims so you're not out of pocket for health benefit expenses. Last year, 1.1 million more Canadians started using Telus Health virtual care, bringing the total number to just a hair under 3 million. And when you add in all the Canadians supported by Telus Health, that number balloons to 19.3 million. Hurley-Burleyites, that's more than half the population. Telus' focus on how its technology supports Canadians across the full continuum of healthcare falls under their ESG commitments, environmental, social, and governance. which you can read more about in their sustainability and ESG report at telus.com/sustainability. All right.
Okay.
So, Greg Lyle, Innovative Research Group, live telephone calling.
Show me, show me, show me. Come on. Like the Cure, David. Let's see it.
It is quite different from his online data.
Oh. Okay.
40 Conservative, 28 Liberal, 21 NDP.
Ooh.
He still thinks, and this is, I must say, contrary to what I think all the aggregators say, he still thinks the Liberals will be the official opposition at the end of the election.
Well, you would think based on that number.
He believes that they're going to sustain heavy losses in their seats outside the GTA. The NDP are, and the Liberals are going to pick up some seats in the GTA in Toronto. So
Interesting. Well, that's great news. It's great news for news for Doug. That's he's essentially within a percentage point of what he got in the last election. So, and depending on the vote efficiency of the other two, just because the Liberal number is up, the NDP number is down, they could pick up. It looks like it's going to be the same, or they actually could have pickups in this election, which is what you're hearing out of the war room. Anyways, they're not saying a lot, but they're saying slight pickups. They've been very consistently bullish about that for the entire campaign.
Well, at 40 and with demographics, you would expect that they would have a shot at increasing their seat total net, right? I mean, like that. I know it's a small thing. I know statistically insignificant, but just having I don't think anybody's had a 4 in front of them so far, right? Ford has not yet had a 4 in any poll in front of them. And that's a big barrier to leap across.
Well, and David, the difference between the live and online, the online samples, do they skew prominently to urban centers?
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. But I think different people do respond online versus on the telephone. And again, all I can say is, in my experience, live telephone calling is more accurate than online interviewing. And in fact, live telephone calling is the only surveys that you are allowed methodologically to claim a margin of error in.
Right.
Oh.
So it's the only one where statistical science can be applied.
That's right. I mean, if you look at the fine print of an online survey, they'll say if this survey was conducted through live interview telephone, it would have a margin of error of X.
Not to make this all about the Liberals, but
Right?
it's a little like prepared and unprepared foods, right? If this was an unprepared crock of macaroni, it would be 620 calories. But because it's prepared, it's 2,900.
You know what, though? I just got this data at 3:00 in the morning. I haven't had a chance to go through it a lot. But, I think the most interesting thing for me that's coming out of this is that the Conservatives aren't winning despite Doug Ford. They're winning because of Doug Ford.
Yeah.
Greg's numbers indicate that the margin of victory are people who do not consider themselves progressive conservatives but are voting for the progressive conservatives because they like Doug Ford, is the margin of victory. And it's because it's really, to be honest, Liberals who are voting for Ford. Because, the Liberals are significantly underperforming in their vote among people who call themselves Liberals. And the Conservatives are overperforming the vote of people who call themselves progressive conservatives. And the reason is Ford.
I mean, we'll talk more about this on Friday, presumably, if these numbers hold. But it's such a credit to the campaign and to the positioning that was established, say, go back at least a year or so, for Ford coming into this campaign. Like, it's just, I don't know that I've ever seen a campaign narrative constructed that fits their leader and candidate so perfectly, that provides them with both shielding and momentum, right? Shield and a sword. Like, it's just this, let's get it done. The premier, yes, we're going to build, we're going to grow. It really fits this guy perfectly. It caught the zeitgeist in terms of coming out of pandemic. So I think they've really, I just think it's as some wins are strategic, some wins are tactical. This is such a smart strategic win, and it's been a year in the making, at least.
Yeah, I agree. It's the campaign plan was obviously drafted. You're looking at guys like Corey Tonight, who a friend of all of ours, very good friend of mine for well over 20 years. That knew what the strengths of the PC party and more importantly the strengths of Doug, the weaknesses of Doug, and they devised an entire campaign plan around it. And as we talked about last week at the live taping at the Toronto Board of Trade, as well as before, what I think is the most important, the important thing that a campaign needs to win, and that is discipline. They have not been. Let's be honest. They really haven't had a bad day on this campaign. So it's not like they haven't had a bad day. But even a lukewarm, mild, good, bad day, they have not been knocked off their campaign plan. They didn't give a shit what the media said in terms of them not taking questions. They did not care that they weren't putting out media advisories. They did not get thrown off by any of it. They stayed very disciplined and they stayed very focused on their plan. Whether people agreed with it or not, it's proven if these numbers hold for tomorrow, the conversation that we have on Friday morning, it's going to have proven to be very, very right.
Like, not to postmortem it before we have a corpse, but, I don't know, you guys, whenever you get asked to go to a university class or speak to like a group of people and you talk about campaigns, one of the things you always say is on a campaign, in any given campaign, independent of party stripe, you will have a few bad days. And the trick is, how do you ensure that a bad day doesn't turn into 2 bad days, doesn't turn into 3 bad days, doesn't blow a week? As you say, Jenni, I mean, one of the things that's really quite anomalous about this campaign is he never really had one genuinely bad day, and bad day being defined as a day where you couldn't focus on your message, where you were forced to respond and headlines were going to be generated based on something that was happening to you, an attack that was launched against you. He just didn't have that. There's no, until this past week, there really wasn't a ton of even sharp critique of Doug Ford.
No, it's interesting to see how hard they've gone now, right? In both their advertising and in their materials. I don't know why the fuck you wait until 4 days left or a week left to pull out these guns. It's like it's like the rule about crisis management. What are you prepared to do? And if you're prepared to do it when it's the right time to do it, not when you're fucking forced into it. Okay?
Because then it's so obvious. You always make this point, David, right? Like, negative advertising is going to yield much less if it appears that you're motivated to do it solely out of desperation, right? So,
totally.
And when you're desperate, chances are, in most cases, it's too late anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I should say, before we completely write this thing off, that there are lots of people, actually, who decide who they're going to vote for on the last day of the campaign in a final way. So it's not, no campaign would shut down. Certainly no opposition campaign would shut down at this point. There's still people to be persuaded. So today matters, and to some extent tomorrow matters, but much less so.
Well, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if turnout's higher than what it was in 2018. It was 57% of the vote, 57% turnout in 18. I can't see it being. Listen, it could be, but I don't see it being much higher or as high. I assume that it's probably going to end up being lower, but I guess we'll see. We'll see Thursday night, tomorrow night.
How could that not be true? Like how and obviously I am for greater participation. I want to see a higher voter turnout, but there is absolutely nothing about this past 4 weeks that suggests that you're going to get an atypically high voter turnout. Zero. Sleepy campaign. Right. People have not even never been engaged in it. I just can't imagine we're going to get a big turnout tomorrow.
Well, and the NDP need a huge turnout. The Liberals would be helpful for the Liberals too, but the NDP absolutely need a huge turnout because the old people are going to vote, and they're voting for Ford. And so, I mean, let's remember that these numbers are not even what they appear. So if the survey says 40 to 21, if that were to be accurate, I would assume that the vote is 42-19. Right?
Why does Greg show the Liberals as a lock for official opposition and everybody else showed as a toss-up or leaning NDP?
Well, I believe it is because he shows the Liberals somewhat stronger inside 416 and 905 than some of the other polls are showing.
So he thinks they're going to steal. His poll would suggest the Liberals are going to steal like Mississauga kind of type seats or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get down to the specific ones,
Right.
but he thinks they're going to take more from the Conservatives and the NDP inside Toronto than inside the GTA. Than some of the other aggregators do. And I think he's forecasting maybe perhaps worse, bigger beatings for the NDP in the North and the Southwest.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean, look at where she's campaigning today. So it suggests that they certainly feel like their Southwest flank is completely exposed, the NDP.
Yeah. While there has been a recent pause in price escalation, first-time home buyers remain frustrated that they will never get the keys to their own home. With the provincial election this week, voters will need to consider what party can help them achieve the Canadian dream of home ownership. Our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, says that while all the major political parties have included some solutions to the crisis in their platforms, what the newly elected government does to prioritize choice and affordability and how quickly they act moving forward will be critical. A recent poll conducted by Abacus Data on behalf of OREA says that 73% of Ontarians think that making housing more affordable should be a high priority for the Ontario government, with 84% saying that a party's ideas on solving the housing affordability crisis could be an important factor when deciding who to vote for on June 2nd. There are bold solutions to get the housing crisis under control that, if enacted, would help create the next generation of Ontario homeowners, including providing more help for first-time home buyers, building more homes, making home ownership more affordable, protecting consumers, and leveling the playing field. We are at a turning point. Whether they are millennials struggling to enter the market, growing families looking for more space, or downsizing empty nesters, it's clear Ontarians want action when it comes to the housing affordability crisis, and the next Ontario government needs to be prepared to respond. At the end of the day, everyone deserves a place to call home. Read OREA's plan at ahomeforeveryone.info. Jenni, you mentioned turnout. So when a race appears to be decided, what do the parties do to get their vote out and make sure that people, if you're the winning side, aren't complacent or on the losing side, aren't deflated? What would you be messaging today?
Well, you'd still have your regular campaign messages, but you'd be going riding by riding, especially in your target ridings where you're worried about losses or you're worried about it being tight, to ensure that you kind of do messaging there. Like, so I assume that's going to be the messaging they had in the Queen's Park today, that there's a tight race, like a statistical tie for Parm Gill in Milton. I'm not sure I fully believe that, and I think that like Parm is probably, in terms of organization, one of our most organized of MPPs. He's a former MP. Like he is kind of has an army of people that do door knocking for him and make calls and all that kind of stuff. So what you're doing now, David, what you're doing is this is where your GOTV matters so much. This is why I would be ignoring the HQ calls to send people to the door. So it's like literally dragging them out. Like, yes, you may think we've got this in the bag, or you may think it's a foregone conclusion. We just need you to vote. It's going to take 20 minutes. You have no idea what's going to happen. Elections, people can be surprised. I'd probably use your 2014 election win when absolutely conservatives across Ontario were absolutely fucking gobsmacked as the results started to come in and became, the level of paleness became more as they realized that you guys were winning a majority, and seats like Durham, which was a safe conservative seat for years, were in the loss column. And so you're feeding into that in terms of pulling the vote. It's tough though. Like it's very, very tough. The most effective way of really dragging people out in these kind of scenarios is the doors.
Jenni, since I always spend election day disconnected from political reality, holed up somewhere in a hotel, writing a concession or victory speech. That's right, getting like a rutabaga facial scrub and drinking Negronis. In the real world of politics, how how is it a real thing to be scared about a big lead? Like in terms of motivation, like I always hear people go, oh God, like I almost don't want to see a number like 40 or 42. I don't want people to think, I'm complacent. I don't need to. Is that a real thing that you would worry about? Or are you just like, no, this just tells me that we have lots of bread to feast on?
Yeah, I don't get too worried about it. When it comes to election day, there's nothing you can do about that anyways. You can only pull out your vote. I'm more worried. These numbers, I'd be more worried a week out. It's because that's when you're just praying that the election campaign ends, or you're praying to get to election day. But on election day you're sitting with a 12-point lead provincially over your nearest opponents. You are worried about certain ridings, like 100%, but I'm not worried. I am worried about complacency in certain ridings. I'm more just like your laser focus is getting out the vote. Like there's no sense, like by that point I've never like woken up going, I'm very worried about the size of our lead. I'm more worried about watching the vote at numbers, go up and down, because parties are sophisticated enough that you can see all that. You can see as people, you get updates from Elections Ontario. You can see where your volunteers are and where they're pulling votes. So you can watch all of this in terms of real time. So for me as a campaign manager, that is kind of what my focus and my worry is on elections day.
I'd be interested to know what the Liberals have done in terms of resource allocation for the last week, because I don't think there's much doubt that the Liberals have the weakest GOTV operation of the three parties. So that will hurt them in close races. So I'm interested to see what they've done in terms of moving resources around to try to buttress the 30 ridings, let's say, where they're in the hunt.
Oh, those are tough. Those are tough decisions, especially when you have almost no volunteers, and add in the factor that it's become more of a stated fact that your leader is going to lose his seat. So those are really tough decisions in terms of moving those chess pieces around.
The 416
I have a hunch he's going to win his seat.
Yeah,
I have a hunch he's going to win his seat, but I know the polling doesn't. But the aggregators don't say that anyway. There was a riding poll that I don't know if Main Street did it that showed them within rock throwing distance of each other. But
I don't want you to piss on some other polling company, David, but what about, I see constantly in the media, Lisa McLeod is ahead by 3.5 points, except for, that cul-de-sac in the north end of her riding. Like, how do these polls get such precise readings on, like the margin of error must be like 25 on these fucking riding polls.
It isn't. I haven't looked at the Main Street riding polls because I don't love riding polls for the reason you're articulating. They do have a large margin of error, anybody who does them, because you're likely only surveying 300 people, maybe 4. But 300 people leaves you, with a margin of error of over 6% if you did a telephone poll. And so that means that if somebody's leading by 3.5 points, they could be leading by 10 or they could be losing. And so I don't care.
Right. And if you got a riding online poll, then like whatever, Joker's wild then, really.
Right. Most times what they do, most times you don't do online in a riding because it's very hard to identify the panels in that geographic area. So more often what they do is an IVR, the robocall thing. And then you get no young people.
Right.
Who answer those things. And so you end up with you interviewed 300 people and 3 of them are under the age of 30. So you have to weight those people up so that those 3 people represent 150 people.
Suddenly the Green Party's at 19% or something. And it's,
exactly. It's weird stuff.
That could explain the Parry Sound Muskoka, literally could explain the Parry Sound Muskoka thing where people are talking about the Greens could win that riding, which I'll come on and eat a boot if that happens. I'd be sure.
I have always preferred taking the overall poll, like the regional polling numbers, and applying them to a well-constructed model rather than doing riding specific polls.
See, I actually think if you're the Liberals, especially, and you're really trying to figure out resources, you're putting the money, if you have it, into not like a chicken shit small poll, David, but like an actual real with live callers, numbers behind it, because there could be a difference between Eglinton Lawrence and Spadina Fort York. So if you're sitting there wondering, you've got 100 volunteers to allocate for the last 3 days of a campaign and you have the money, then specific riding polls, I personally think specific riding polls are going to be extremely helpful.
Eglinton Lawrence is going to be a crackerjack of a poll riding to watch. You would think, based on these numbers, you would think that the Liberals would safely. It's a.
Well, wait a second. We did a fundraiser for the candidate in that for the Liberal candidate in that riding. How could she possibly lose after that?
I don't think. I don't.
We made an appearance in the riding. The curse of had 2/3 of the curse of politics showed up.
Her campaign began with such a gust of wind, such an enormous cannon blast of momentum. Me and David drinking beer and saying, "Yeah," and then Chrétien said to John Crow, and people are like going, "Who are these guys? What the fuck are they talking about?"
Well, it'll be an interesting one to watch because, of course, when the results come in, I did TV, I did CTV last election, and they come in, I think it was like 9 minutes in that the election was called, 12 minutes in that the majority was called. But there were some ridings that took longer, and Eglinton Lawrence was one of those ridings when we were sitting there kind of an hour and a half, 2 hours in. That was one of the ridings that was one of the latest to call for Robin Martin and the Conservatives. So we'll see if that's actually going to be the case tomorrow night as well.
I will assume that Arlene Hebert wins the riding, just because the numbers in the 416 and all that. It's just that if the Conservatives are cruising above 40, then you start to go, well, shit. Like nothing's a sure bet.
Apparently Vanier is. Apparently Ottawa Vanier is a sure bet.
I would think.
Wasn't that the most surest bet of any Liberal seat in the entire country? Like, wasn't Absolutely. That where they were going to move Chrétien?
I was saying there was a by-election in that riding in 2017. I thought we were going to lose it, and if we lost it, we were all going to be just taken out and shot on the
I remember
spot.
that. You were very nervous. Like, if you can't win in Ottawa Vanier, you don't get to play in the band. Sorry, you're off stage.
And I was being told by the PCs at the time that they were poised to win, and I was like, I don't fucking think so. And as you drill down in questions, you realize their internal polling only included Anglos. I'm like, okay, we can't
that would be a factor in that round.
That's strategic genius. Way to go!
Translate the Vanier poll. That's funny.
No, but if Liberals lose in Ottawa Vanier, that's kind of like the Tyrannosaurus Rex are looking around saying those mammals are starting to look pretty hungry. I think we're in trouble. Like, it's just end of day.
Well, with a week to go, with a week to go in 2018, our seat projection model said 0. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's quickly move on.
Okay.
One last thing before we break up today, which is Andrea Horwath actually, and I presume this was deliberate on her part.
I don't.
Bit on the leadership question yesterday. And you had some comment about it on Twitter. So what's your opinion about what she did yesterday?
I don't think, I mean, I'm really curious to hear why you would think it was deliberate. I don't think anything about the context of it suggested it was deliberate. It looked to me like a fumbled answer where she was just reticent to say, of course I'll be on, and did that thing where the leader doesn't want to say something that seems patently false and sounds inauthentic, but because she's not going to be the leader after Thursday night. And I don't think there's any mystery around it, but her position has to be, I'm not getting into June 3rd. We're running hard to win. We're going to win as many seats in as many parts of the province as we can. And I'm the leader, and I'm going to remain the leader. And then you deal with it the day after. Unless you do what we did in 2018 with Kathleen, where you say there is a deliberate strategy behind saying, which is something that's never been done before, right? The dodgeball.
Hopefully in the future either. But anyway.
So it makes no sense. Then it takes first of all, it captures the media for that day. So you lose that day as one of your last 3 days. And second of all, it's kind of a dispiriting thing where people start calling headquarters and going, "Fuck, man, are we giving up? Like, what's going on?" And so it's just, I see no rationale for doing it. So if it was deliberate, then it was deliberately dumb. If it was indeliberate, she should know better than to bite on that after 4 goddamn campaigns.
I just thought she was already looking ahead to Friday, and I've heard some rumblings of a 901 thing going in the NDP about right after as soon as the results are announced, they're going for her head. And I presume she was trying to preempt that, which is to say, fuck, if I lose, I'm going, obviously. So that the party doesn't go squirrely on her.
But they're in a pitched battle for a second. How could she afford to?
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of a little bit between the both of you guys. Like, I think that it's evident that, like, if she doesn't win, especially if she's in third based on those polling numbers, then there's 0% chance she'll be able to hang on, and probably was just trying to make sure it didn't become a story that, Andrea Horwath loses, she's stepping down. And that's a hard one to, like, put yourself in her shoes. That's a hard one to try to answer. Like, if you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? So, you say, absolutely, I'm staying on. It doesn't matter what happens. And then you have, especially if there is a movement internally to push her out, then it's the unnamed assholes leading in for the next 2 days saying, oh yeah, no, there's no chance she stays on. Or it becomes, the narrative, Andrea Horwath tried to stay on, she was hanging on by her fingernails, but she was pushed out by the party, even though I think that it's evident to everyone that, the fourth time's not a charm kind of thing.
Right.
Not to go on and on about this, but I just want to say one thing more. This isn't message management. This is literally media management. This is where media are going to ask you this question, and the interaction literally between the questioner and the responder, like, you can just throw oil on that water by looking them in the eye, giving them the dead fish look and saying, I'm not giving you the answer other than what you expect. So I'm not biting. So you say, we're working hard in every part of the province. I'm the leader. We're looking forward to a good return. That's the only focus. I'm not talking about June 3rd. And then you just run it. And you make it impossible. And that's what Del Duca said when he was asked the question. And as we are talking here, people are questioning whether or not he'll, end up in second or third. Will he win his riding? So it's just as relevant and therefore just as tricky a question for him. And he just threw the puck into the corner. This isn't like that was just shit work on her part in responding to a question that's obvious, and she should know how to answer it at this point.
Excellent. All right, let's wrap up with our blessings and curses. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go. The blessing is this is actually a very sweet spot of a campaign, regardless of kind of where you're at, because there's really only one thing to do. You now have to pull your vote. I know that the Liberals and the NDP are going to be sitting in their war rooms still thinking there's a chance for a Hail Mary that's going to change everything in the next 24 hours. And they're probably sitting through opposition research, looking at like chicken shit things that they can put out on candidates and what have you. But at the end of the day, all that can be done now is to pull your vote. There is almost nothing from a communications point of view, from a messaging point of view, that is going to change what the results of this election are. If you're in tight races, the only thing that is going to change is how what you're doing today and how ready you are tomorrow in terms of pulling out the last of your vote.
I've got almost the exact same one, only mine comes in the opposite. Mine's a curse. Mine's a curse on all the us's, David. All the wankers, all the strategists and comms people. You're useless now.
I'm a strategist and you're a wanker.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I noticed when you introduced us, when you started the pod today, you said I'm joined by two of Canada's greatest strategists. I'm like, oh, so Jenni Byrne, Scott is also here. But seriously, like as Jenny says, right, the comms guys, the folks that sit around and like, say, here's where our message goes. The only thing you can do is go buy a pair of comfortable shoes, because the only contribution you can make to this election from here on in is yanking people out of their homes and walking door to door to as many marked polls as possible. And that's it, man. So there's a curse on you. Like, this is always my most uncomfortable time of the campaign, because I know, like, I'm an appendix. I'm the appendix of the campaign at this point.
All right. My blessing goes out to Deb Matthews, Deb Matthews, my co-chair, an enormous source of guidance and support in the last election campaign, former health minister and other things. She's been out there, Scott, working her tail off for the party. She's been in so many ridings, in addition to supporting Kate Graham in London. She's been in so many ridings, and she's such a warm and positive and compassionate person that for all those Liberal campaigns that have been fighting hard up against a tough hill, would have been such a welcome sight to show up in your riding for a day of door knocking. You don't have to do it, Deb. Nobody was expecting it for you, so God bless you for being that kind of person. Can
I just add one thing? I love Deb so much. She came to our Curse of Politics taping, but you're so right, David. Through thick and thin, through times of success and times of failure. In 1995, I spent the entire campaign, and the last half of the 1995 provincial campaign was no headquarters to be in. It was bunker time. And I was in there. I had a little red rubber ball, and I would throw it against the wall. And that's how I spent most hours, most days, just throwing the ball against the wall and catching it in my right hand. And Deb sat beside me, and she would be absolutely indefatigably positive, always having fun, lifting people's spirits. She is just quality people, man. She is the best.
Yeah. Jenni, she's a big fan of the show. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, today. Thanks for listening or watching, whatever you're doing. And I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Telus, and our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. As I said, I'd like to thank Allison Smith of Queen's Park Today, and Greg Lyle and the Innovative Research Group, and Jenni and Scott. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.